The situation in Syria continues to escalate. Now, Russian jets are shadowing U.S. drones in Syria, which poses the question, is Putin preparing to team up also with China in this effort, as reports are coming out that the Chinese Liberation Army may actually be teaming up with Russia? Ooh, gosh, is there any stopping Russia's rise? Well, perhaps not with this administration. John Hanna, senior counselor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He joins me now to discuss this increasingly dangerous world stage being dominated by some very familiar enemies. John, very good to see you. A number of stories out. These Predator drones, Russian fighter jets shadowing U.S. Predator drones on at least 3 separate occasions in Syrian airspace since the start of this air campaign last week. What is the purpose behind this? What is Russia trying to prove? Is this an aggressive move?
Yeah, there's no question. All these moves that the Russians have taken, from the several incursions into Turkish airspace to this trailing of the drones to a flying close to U.S. aircraft. There was, in fact, a U.S. aircraft had to divert when the Russians got too close over the past couple of days. So I think all of this is for Putin to simply set the stage that says he is calling the shots. He is going to be able to stand down the United States, deny the U.S. certain military options, and he's going to dictate both the military and political outcomes of this conflict.
And there's a concern that there might be some sort of air conflict that could break out as a result of this. And Turkey is saying, well, we can't, I mean, they told The Guardian they cannot endure, their direct quote, they cannot endure this violation of their airspace, and now NATO's involved. What's going to be the result of all of this? Because every week it just is escalating further.
Yeah, no, this has gotten incredibly dangerous, but this is what people have warned about. If you're constantly sending messages of weakness to your enemies, it inevitably is going to be provocative. They're going to push and push and push, and at some point they're going to overstep the line, and you won't have any more room to back down. You'll have to respond. I'm afraid we're getting close to that point inside of Syria. There are just too many advanced weapons, advanced aircraft in a very small space pursuing quite different objectives. Either the United States is going to have to at some point choose ground to stand up to Putin, or it's going to choose dishonor. And right now, I think the obvious choice for the United States, for this administration, has been dishonor. The question is whether they're going to get war anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if that timetable is going to serve the choosing to stand up to Putin. I don't know if the timetable before elections is going to help with that, especially with the headline that China might be on the verge of teaming up with Russia, their military getting involved. Now, we knew that, Iran and China are considered allies with Russia, but this is a whole new ballgame. If they're now considering putting either aircraft or boots on the ground in Syria to help with this objective, this is changing the game in a very dramatic way. There are some people, John, who are saying that this is how it starts with World War III.
Well, I still think that with China, this is a fairly low probability event, but huge, high impact. It would be a game changer and maybe even game over for the Obama administration in Syria and the broader Middle East. For those two adversarial powers of the United States to come in on the same side, it would basically resolve this conflict in Syria. Assad would be going nowhere, and the Russians and Chinese and the Iranians would be able to impose a solution in this war. And I think the United States would be left in a really a historical change of the correlation of forces and balance of power in the Middle East that it will haunt us for a very long time to come.
Has this administration made its case well enough as to why Assad should be disposed of, much in the same way that we saw with Gaddafi, that we saw Mubarak in Egypt, how they tried to get involved with Honduras? Because it seems as though if it's not Assad, it's not going to be one of these so-called moderate rebel groups that Russia's bombing, but it would be ISIS that would step up. What is the counter that the United States has had to that argument? What is the solution that the administration has proposed?
Well, that's the problem. The president has no strategy, and he has no political solution. They just want to go in there and kick him out. Well, that's his claim. I think he was forced into that position. I bet if you put a gun to his head, or excuse the terminology, but if you got the president to take a truth serum, he'd tell you today he'd take it all back. He doesn't want Assad to go. He's perfectly fine having Assad there and let somebody else sort all this out. But he has said it, but he hasn't backed it up with anything further than that. And again, I think it leaves the United States looking completely hollow and has opened up the entire field for all of our worst enemies who mean us nothing but harm to fill this void.
So if Russia and, say, China gets involved and they go ahead and they cement Assad in place, they take care of these so-called moderate rebel factions that have been fighting with ISIS over territory, are they then, do you have the expectation that they would then turn around and finish off ISIS, or are they just going to kind of dust off their hands and let it be?
No, my guess is that's where they're headed. They would like to present the West with a choice. You either can back Assad or you can back ISIS. Those are the only two forces left. Yep. And then I think they would hope that the rest of the world comes in behind their coalition. The U.S. coalition dissolves behind Russian leadership, and then people go in and decide to fight ISIS, and Assad takes over, and we've got an Iranian, Russian, maybe Chinese-dominated axis in the Middle East.
Right. Wow, that is, and the influence of Russia grows, and that is a scary thing. And
the course of history will certainly be changed if that's the outcome that we allow here. Yeah. Well, and and there's also the theory too, John, that they could just continue to grow until they overextend themselves. It's happened before, but would it happen again with this Putin-led Russia? Yeah, and does it happen in a time frame? Because between now and the time that the Russians are overextended and really begin to feel some serious pain and can't sustain this fight anymore, an awful lot of damage. There can be millions of more refugees flowing into Europe, destabilizing key American allies in Turkey and Jordan. ISIS can get stronger. Its foreign fighters that it's training right now that have Western passports can go off to Europe and the United States and plan terrorist operations there. So an awful lot of bad things can happen before Putin comes up against the wall. Wow, it is a mess. 2016 can't get here soon enough. John Hanna with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. John, it's good to see you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dana.